Basis risk. Basis risk occurs when moves in the futures market are not offset equally by the price moves of the underlying commodity in the physical market. Essentially, it is the difference between the current physical market price of the asset and the futures price. In a perfect scenario, there would be no basis. However, as producers and manufacturers can purchase and receive a different price to what they have hedged, differences can occur. These differences reflect the imperfect correlation of the physical price and the futures price. The better the correlation, the more effective a hedging strategy will be. It is important for hedgers to understand basis risk to determine if futures and options are appropriate to manage your price risk, when to initiate, modify, or close out a hedge position, who hedgers should buy from or sell dairy products to in the physical market. This video will provide examples of potential basis risk for NZX's New Zealand milk price and dairy ingredients derivatives contracts and its impact on a trader's hedging strategy. For NZX New Zealand milk price futures, one way basis risk can occur is if a farmer's physical exposure is with a non-Fonterra processor as the contract settles to the Fonterra Farmgate milk price. Basis therefore arises when a divergence in price occurs between the producer's physical milk price received and the NZX New Zealand milk price futures final settlement price determined by the Fonterra price. For example, Sue, a New Zealand dairy farmer, sells NZX New Zealand milk price futures at $6.50 to fix her milk price for the current season. Sue supplies her physical milk to a non-Fonterra processor and receives a physical milk price of $6.30 per kilogram of milk solids for the current season. If Fonterra's Farmgate milk price and in turn NZX's New Zealand milk price futures final settlement price for the season was announced at $6.40, this would create a negative basis for Sue of 10 cents. Sue's net position is negatively impacted as the settlement she receives from her futures position is not sufficient to offset the lower physical milk price she received. Since she is only paid $6.30 from her processor, her net milk price would be $6.40. $6.30 plus the settlement from her futures positions of 10 cents, resulting in a lower net milk price than her futures price of $6.50 due to the negative basis. Vice versa, if her processor's price was higher than the Fonterra price, Sue will experience a positive basis which results in a higher net selling price. For example, if Sue had sold NZX New Zealand milk price futures at $6.50 and the Fonterra Farmgate milk price was announced at $6.30, she would receive 20 cents per kilogram of milk solids at the settlement of her futures position. If Sue was then paid $6.40 from her processor, her all-in rate would be $6.60. $6.40 plus the settlement from her futures position of 20 cents, resulting in a higher net milk price than her hedged futures price due to positive basis. As Sue is exposed to basis risk, she will need to look at the historical differences between the milk price she receives against Fonterra's milk price. This potential difference needs to be considered when she plans her hedging policy. Basis risk can be both a risk and an opportunity depending on if it's negative or positive. For hedgers of dairy ingredients such as Steve, who buys whole milk powder for his drinks manufacturing firm, basis can occur from purchasing or selling physical ingredients at different times or on different platforms to Global Dairy Trade NZX's settlement mechanism. NZX dairy ingredient futures final settlement prices are derived from the average price of the two Global Dairy Trade auctions final prices within the settlement month. For example, if Steve had an NZX whole milk powder futures hedge in place at $3,000 expiring in March, and the average GDT results of March C2 regular whole milk powder were $3,500, Steve would receive $500 per metric tonne from the settlement of his futures position. If Steve paid $3,600 for whole milk powder when he procured it from a supplier in March, his all-in rate would be $3,100. $3,600 minus the settlement from his futures position of $500, resulting in a higher net whole milk powder purchase price than his futures price due to negative basis. Vice versa, if his physical price was lower than the GDT price, Steve will experience a positive basis which results in a lower net buying price. For example, If Steve had an NZX whole milk powder futures hedge in place at $3,000 expiring in March, and the average GDT results for March C2 regular whole milk powder with $3,500, Steve would receive $500 per metric tonne from the settlement of his futures position. If Steve paid $3,400 for whole milk powder when he procured it from a supplier in March, his all-in rate would be $2,900. $3,400 minus the settlement from his futures position of $500, resulting in a lower net whole milk powder purchase price than his futures price due to positive basis. This could have also occurred if Steve purchased a higher proportion of his whole milk powder requirement in the first option, where prices were bid up higher. As Steve is exposed to basis risk, he will need to look at the historical differences between the prices he pays for whole milk powder versus global dairy trade pricing. This potential difference needs to be considered when he plans his hedging policy. Basis risk can be both a risk and an opportunity, depending on if it's negative or positive. In summary, any change in a hedge's physical markets price relative to a change in futures contracts settlement price will cause a change in basis. For hedgers who sell dairy products, a positive basis occurs when the futures settlement price is less than their physical price, and a negative basis occurs when the futures settlement price is greater than the physical price received. And vice versa for hedgers who buy dairy products. When the futures settlement price is more than their physical price, this is positive basis, and a negative basis occurs when the physical price paid is more than the futures settlement price. The behaviour of the basis can have a significant impact on the performance of a hedge. Therefore, it is important that hedgers maintain historical basis records in order to compare the current basis with expected basis at the time of the ultimate purchase or sell. To learn more, please refer to our other educational videos at the link on screen.